everything that he never would be. He had no desire, ever, to try and bottle up that freedom and use it for himself, to limit it, whatever he thought about it sometimes. "I'll get the drinks," Colt said, getting up from his seat. One of the cousins that had grown up with them, Colt was only a couple years younger than Ryder. He'd been 15 when their parents had been killed. His brother Jake had been 17. Reining in the older kids had been one of the harder parts of the whole thing. Because how did you tell someone who was basically your age that they needed to quit staying out all night and maybe try a little bit harder at school? Well, you just said it, but it didn't always go down well. Ryder had been a teenager, not a parent. It wasn't like he'd been a model for anything good or decent. The only reason he had kept his grades up when he was in high school was because he wanted to stay on the football team. That had been his life. And he had been untouchable, golden, until he wasn't. Until he had discovered that his family was more than touchable. They were breakable. Until he had to give up college scholarships and other aspirations so that he could take care of everyone. Not that he would have made it into the NFL after college. He just would have been able to use football to get through school. It didn't matter. He had never wanted to be a rancher. He wanted to get out. He wanted to leave home and see the world and have something different than his uncle, who had lived on one plot of land for his whole life. Different than his father, who had been the police chief of the town he was born in, the town he'd never left. And here he was, the same, just the same, and only about 10 years younger than his dad had been when he'd died, too. That was a real parade of cheer. It didn't take Colt long to return with drinks, and he passed around bottles of beer. Pansy took one and stood. His younger sister was pocket-size, a petite anomaly in a family that was otherwise of above-average height. Pansy had followed their father's footsteps. She was currently the youngest police chief Gold Valley had ever had, and the first female. He was damned proud of her. But he didn't believe for a moment that it was down to something he'd done right. Pansy was just good all the way through, determined and strong. She'd had to be. She'd only been 10 when their parents had died. Poor Rose had been 7. Yeah, it had been a certain kind of hard to deal with the teenagers, but comforting children who were crying helplessly over mothers who would never hold them again, that was a hell he didn't like to remember even now. So instead, he just looked at Pansy, a grown woman with a man by her side. That had been the first time he had to deal with something like that, too. West Caldwell had come and asked him for permission, and Ryder had a feeling that he should have rejected that, told him he didn't need it. But he felt like he did. He felt like he needed it for each and every one of them, because they were his. Even Sammy. Because while she might be the sun in his life, he was her protector. It was his job to make sure nothing bad ever happened to them. "West and I have an announcement," Pansy said, smiling. "We're getting married." Sammy Marshall was in a whole mood, and Pansy's marriage announcement somehow made her feel even more tender. She'd come out to have a good time, to forget life and all its irritants, and for a moment, on the dance floor with those guys, it had almost worked. They were into her. That always made her feel good. A little attention she could control. A little attention that didn't cost anything. But then she'd looked over at the table and caught Ryder's eye, and something about him had brought her back down to reality. Back to who she was. Though it wasn't his fault the confrontation she'd had earlier with her estranged mother had lodged itself in her chest and wouldn't let go, and it enraged her. She didn't want to